Just eat it, Olivia. Stop being so dramatic. My mom snapped, pushing the plate of shrimp pasta toward me. The familiar tightness crept into my throat just from the smell. Everyone else is enjoying it. You're ruining another family dinner. I'm Olivia Mitchell, 24, and for as long as I can remember, certain foods have made me sick. Not just uncomfortable, but really sick. Throat tightening, stomach cramping, dizziness kind of sick. But according to my family, I was just being difficult. Mom, please, I said quietly, pushing the plate away. You know seafood makes me ill. My sister Kate rolled her eyes from across the table. Oh, here we go again with your mysterious reactions. You ate fish sticks all the time when we were kids. That was before I started, but Dad cut me off. Enough. Your mother spent hours cooking this meal. The least you could do is show some appreciation. I looked down at my empty plate, fighting back tears. This was every family dinner, me trying to explain, then refusing to listen. The worst part, they were right about one thing. I hadn't always been like this. The reactions started when I was 16, and since then, the list of foods I couldn't tolerate kept growing. Fine, my mom sighed dramatically. I suppose you want your special plain chicken and rice again. Like a child. Before I could respond, Kate jumped in. She's just doing this for attention, Mom. Remember last month when she claimed she was allergic to the birthday cake at my engagement party? I remembered. I also remembered spending that night violently ill. But nobody saw that part because I'd learned to hide my reactions. It was easier than dealing with their mockery. My dad reached across the table and put a small portion of pasta on my plate. Just try a bite, princess. Your mother's right. This picky eating has gone on long enough. I stared at the pasta, my heart racing. They didn't understand. They never understood. Every time I tried to explain about the throat tightening, the difficulty breathing, the crushing stomach pain, they dismissed it as anxiety or attention-seeking. I can't, I whispered, standing up. I'm sorry, but I can't. Sit down. Mom's voice cracked like a whip. You're 24 years old, for heaven's sake. This is ridiculous. I remained standing, gathering my courage. What's ridiculous is that none of you believe me. I've been telling you for years that something's wrong, but you won't listen. Kate snorted. Oh, we listen. We listen to your new food drama every single week. Last month it was dairy. Before that it was nuts. Now it's seafood. What's next, Air? Actually, a quiet voice spoke up from the end of the table. My brother Mike, who usually stayed out of these conflicts, cleared his throat. I've noticed she gets really red and blotchy after certain foods. Maybe there's something. Don't encourage her, Mom interrupted. She's perfectly fine. This is just like when she was convinced she had chronic fatigue in college. Remember that drama? I did remember. I also remember the doctor suggesting food allergy testing back then. But my parents had dismissed it as unnecessary. They were convinced it was all in my head. The shrimp pasta sat on my plate, taunting me. The smell alone was making my throat feel tight. But years of their disbelief had planted seeds of doubt in my own mind. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being dramatic. With trembling hands, I picked up my fork. Everyone watched as I took a tiny bite, their expressions a mix of triumph and expectation. The reaction was almost immediate. My throat began to close, and a familiar panic set in. But this time it was different, worse than ever before. See, Mom said proudly, nothing happened. Just like we said. I tried to speak, to tell them something was very wrong. But no words came out. The room started spinning, and the last thing I heard was Mike's alarmed voice saying, "Her face. Look at her face." Then everything went black. I woke up to bright lights and the steady beep of hospital monitors. Mike was sitting beside my bed, his face drawn with worry. In the hallway, I could hear my parents' voices arguing with someone. What happened? I managed to whisper. Mike squeezed my hand. You had a severe allergic reaction. They had to use 2 EpiPens in the ambulance. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. They said if we waited any longer to call 911. The door opened and a doctor walked in, followed by my pale-faced parents. Miss Mitchell, she said, looking at her chart. We've got your initial test results back, and I have to say, I'm concerned about what I'm seeing. The doctor's words hung in the air as she pulled up my test results on her tablet. Ms. Mitchell has one of the most severe cases of multiple food protein intolerance syndrome I've seen, combined with several life-threatening allergies. My mother sank into the chair beside Mike, her face ashen. But she was fine as a child. This can't be right. Actually, the doctor continued, her voice firm. FPIES and severe allergies can develop at any age. Looking at her medical history, the symptoms started appearing in her teens. As no one investigated this before. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We thought she was just being particular about food. Particular? The doctor's eyebrows shot up. These test results show severe reactions to shellfish, dairy, nuts, and several other protein groups. This isn't about being particular. These reactions could be fatal. I watched as the weight of those words settled over my family. Years of dismissal, mockery, and forced feeding flashed through my mind. All those times I begged them to believe me, only to be told I was seeking attention. The blood tests also show significant inflammation markers. The doctor continued, turning the tablet so they could see. Her body has been under constant stress from repeated exposure to trigger foods. Frankly, I'm concerned about the long-term damage this has caused. Mom started crying quietly, but I felt oddly detached from her tears. Where was this concern when I was doubled over in pain after family dinners? Where was this worry when I begged to see a specialist? We'll need to run more comprehensive allergy panels, the doctor explained, but for now, I'm prescribing 2 EpiPens that she must carry at all times. And we'll need to discuss a strict elimination diet. I've basically been doing that already, I interrupted, my voice hoarse. When I could. When I was allowed to. The sharp intake of breath from my parents told me the blow had landed. Good. Mike, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. I should have said something sooner. I noticed how sick she would get, but I didn't want to cause problems. The doctor made some notes on her tablet. Going forward, Ms. Mitchell will need her entire family's support. This condition requires careful management. One mistake could be catastrophic. As if to emphasize her point, a nurse came in to adjust my IV drip. Your anaphylactic response was severe, she explained kindly. We'll need to keep you under observation for at least another 24 hours. Kate chose that moment to burst into the room, her face streaked with tears. I came as soon as Mike called. Olivia, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. But I wasn't ready for her apology. Not yet. Not after years of her leading the charge and mocking my food drama. Ms. Mitchell needs rest. The doctor intervened, clearly sensing the tension. I'll have the nurse bring in some information packets about FPIES and anaphylaxis. I strongly recommend the whole family educate themselves about these conditions. After the doctor left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. My parents looked lost, Kate kept wiping away tears, and Mike just held my hand, his grip steady and apologetic. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice small. Why didn't you push harder to make us understand? Why didn't you insist on seeing a doctor? I stared at her in disbelief. I did. For years I did. You told me I was being dramatic. You told me it was all in my head. You forced me to eat foods that made me sick because you didn't believe me. We didn't know, Dad started, but I cut him off. You didn't want to know, I corrected him. It was easier to blame me than to admit something might actually be wrong. Do you know how scary it is to feel your throat closing up while your own family tells you you're faking it? The monitors betrayed my rising stress levels, their beeping increasing slightly. Mike squeezed my hand in warning. The doctor said I could have died tonight. I continued, my voice shaking. If Mike hadn't noticed my reaction and called 911, I could have died at our dinner table while you all told me to stop being dramatic. The truth of those words seemed to hit them like a physical blow. Mom started sobbing in earnest now. Dad looked like he aged 10 years, and Kate couldn't even meet my eyes. A nurse poked her head in. Everything okay in here? Her heart rate is elevated. We were just leaving, Mike said firmly, giving our parents a pointed look. My sister needs to rest. As they filed out, each looking more devastated than the last, I felt a strange mix of vindication and exhaustion. The truth was finally out, backed by undeniable medical evidence. But the cost of that validation had almost been my life. Mike stayed behind briefly. I'll be back tomorrow with your things. And Olivia? He paused at the door. I'm so sorry I didn't speak up sooner. That changes now. As the door closed behind him, I closed my eyes, finally letting my tears fall. Years of being disbelieved, dismissed, and mocked had led to this moment. But as I drifted off to sleep, one thought kept circling in my mind. What would happen now that they couldn't deny my condition anymore? 3 months after my hospitalization, I sat in my new apartment, carefully reviewing the menu for our first family dinner since the incident. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Just double-checking. Olive oil is safe, right? I've cleaned the entire kitchen and bought new pots to avoid cross-contamination. I smiled slightly at her message. The change in my family had been dramatic, though it took nearly losing me to get here. The days following my hospital stay had been intense. My parents, shaken by how close they'd come to losing their daughter, threw themselves into learning everything they could about my conditions. Dad spent hours researching FPIES and anaphylaxis, while Mom joined online support groups for families dealing with severe food allergies. Kate, perhaps feeling the most guilty about her past behavior, had completely transformed. She postponed her engagement party to help me move into my own place, away from our parents' well-meaning but overwhelming concern. "You need a safe space," she'd said, helping me set up a kitchen where I could control every ingredient. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mike. "Need me to pick up anything from that special grocery store?" Mike had become my strongest advocate. He'd taken a food safety course and learned how to use an EpiPen, then insisted on teaching the rest of the family. "Never again," he'd said firmly during the training session. "We're never risking Olivia's life again. Tonight would be the test, our first family dinner since the hospital. But this time it would be at my place, with my rules." The doorbell rang early. It was Kate carrying several shopping bags. "I brought the special plates and new utensils," she announced. "And I make those allergy-friendly brownies you sent the recipe for. 3 test batches to make sure they were perfect." I hugged her, remembering how far we'd come from her mocking my food draw. Mom and Dad arrived next, Mom clutching her tablet with all my safe recipes saved. Dad carried a container labeled "Safe for Olivia" in bold letters. "I made the quinoa salad exactly as the allergist approved," he said proudly. Mike arrived last, doing one final check of all the ingredients against my safe list before we sat down to eat. The dinner itself was surreal. Instead of pressuring me to eat dangerous foods, my family now watched anxiously as I took each bite, ready to spring into action at the slightest sign of a reaction. It was almost comical how far the pendulum had swung. "You can relax," I assured them, enjoying my safely prepared meal. "Everything's fine." "We can't help it," Mom said softly. "Every time I think about that night, about all the nights we didn't believe you." She trailed off, tears in her eyes. "I found your old diary," Kate admitted suddenly, "from high school. I was helping pack your room and, Olivia, the way you described those reactions, the pain, the fear, and we just kept dismissing you. How can you even stand to be around us?" I set down my fork, considering her question. The truth was, forgiveness hadn't come easily. The first few weeks after the hospital, I'd been angry, furious even. Years of gaslighting and dismissal had left deep emotional scars. "I can stand to be around you because you finally listened," I said carefully. "Yes, it took something dramatic to make you hear me. But once you did, you actually changed. That matters." Dad cleared his throat. "We visited an allergist ourselves," he announced, "to learn more. She helped us understand what you've been going through all these years. The physical symptoms, but also the trauma of not being believed." "We're in family therapy," Mom added, "learning to be better listeners, to trust when our children tell us something's wrong." Mike raised his glass of allergen-free sparkling cider. "To Olivia," he said, "for surviving not just the allergies, but us." Everyone laughed, but I could see the truth of his words hit home. I raised my own glass. To learning and changing, and to safe food. After dinner, as my family helped clean up, using the special allergen-free cleaning products they'd researched, I watched them with a mixture of love and lingering caution. The hypervigilance could be overwhelming sometimes, but it was far better than the dangerous dismissal of before. "Next month's dinner is at our place," Mom said as they prepared to leave. "I've already planned the menu and bought separate cooking equipment, and we've installed an air purifier, just in case." I hugged her, remembering the mom who used to force shrimp pasta onto my plate. "Thanks, Mom, for everything." As I closed the door behind them, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been difficult, and the validation had come at a terrifying price. But we made it through. My family had transformed from my biggest threat to my strongest support system. On my phone, a new family group chat notification popped up. Next week's cooking class. Understanding food allergies. Who's in? I smiled and typed, "Count me in." Sometimes the hardest lessons come at the highest costs. But watching my family become my fiercest protectors made it all worthwhile. We nearly lost everything to learn this lesson, but in the end, we gained something precious: understanding, respect, and a deeper love built on trust and validation. The pain shot through my spine like lightning as I tried to get out of bed. My legs trembled, refusing to hold my weight. But I knew what would happen if I didn't make it downstairs in the next 5 minutes. "Sarah, it's 7 a.m. Stop pretending and get down here." My stepmother Lisa's voice pierced through the walls of our Victorian house. At 23, I'd become the family's designated attention seeker. Every wince, every tear, every doctor's appointment was met with eye rolls and accusations. Even my father, once my biggest supporter, had started believing Lisa's narrative about my manufactured symptoms. "I'm trying," I called back, my voice shaking as I gripped the bedpost. The room spun violently, but I forced myself to stand. 3 steps to the dresser. 5 to the door. Just keep moving. Oh, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence. My stepsister Megan sneered as I carefully made my way down the stairs, clinging to the railing. At 19, she fully embraced her mother's attitude toward me. Dad sat at the breakfast table, hidden behind his newspaper. He didn't look up when I slowly lowered myself into a chair, biting back a whimper as my joints protested. "The dishes need washing," Lisa announced, pointedly staring at the full sink. "Since you can't contribute to the household financially anymore, the least you can do is keep up with chores." 6 months ago, I'd been forced to leave my job as a graphic designer when the mysterious symptoms became too severe to ignore. The migraines, joint pain, muscle weakness, and constant fatigue had transformed me from an independent young woman into someone who could barely make it through basic daily tasks. "I'll do them after breakfast," I promised, reaching for a piece of toast with trembling hands. "Like you did yesterday." Megan rolled her eyes. "Oh wait, you were too busy having one of your episodes then too." The toast turned to ash in my mouth as I remembered yesterday's incident. I collapsed in the kitchen, my legs giving out without warning. Instead of helping me up, they'd stood around discussing how I was obviously faking for sympathy. "I have a doctor's appointment today," I said quietly, directing my words to Dad's newspaper. "Dr. Williams wants to run more tests." The newspaper lowered slightly. "Another appointment? Sarah, this is getting ridiculous. Do you know how much money we've wasted on your imaginary illness?" "It's not imaginary," I whispered, fighting back tears. "Something's really wrong. Dr. Williams thinks." "Dr. Williams thinks whatever you want him to think," Lisa interrupted. "You've always been good at manipulating people, haven't you?" I stared at my plate, remembering when I'd first moved in with Dad and Lisa after Mom's death 5 years ago. Things had been different then. Lisa had actually seemed to care, before she decided I was competing for Dad's attention. The room suddenly tilted, and my vision blurred at the edges. "Not now," I pleaded silently, but my body had other plans. The toast slipped from my fingers as violent tremors racked my frame. "Oh, here we go again," Megan sighed dramatically. "Should we call the Oscar committee?" Through the haze of pain, I heard chairs scraping back. No one came to help. They just watched as I slid from my chair onto the cold kitchen floor, my muscles spasming uncontrollably. "Sarah, enough." Dad's voice was sharp. "This attention-seeking behavior has to stop." But I couldn't stop. My body was betraying me in ways I couldn't, or wouldn't, understand. As consciousness started to fade, I heard Lisa on the phone. "Yes, she's doing it again," she was saying, presumably to Dr. Williams' office. "We need this to end. Send whoever you need to send. We'll prove she's faking." The next thing I remember is opening my eyes to find not just Dr. Williams, but a stern-looking woman in a white coat kneeling beside me on the kitchen floor. "I'm Dr. Eleanor Chen, neurology specialist," she said, her fingers pressed against my wrist. "Just lie still while I examine you." My family hovered nearby, their expressions a mix of annoyance and embarrassment at having a specialist witness what they assumed was my latest performance. But as Dr. Chen conducted her examination, her face grew increasingly serious. She pulled out various instruments, testing my reflexes, muscle strength, and nervous system responses. With each test, her frown deepened. "How long has she been experiencing these symptoms?" she asked sharply. "She claims it's been 6 months," Lisa replied, emphasizing the word claims. "And you haven't sought specialized care before now?" Dr. Chen's tone could have frozen fire. "We thought she was just," Dad began. "Just what?" Dr. Chen cut him off. "Just lying about being in excruciating pain? Just pretending to lose control of her muscles? Just imagining the clear neurological symptoms I'm seeing?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across their faces. Dr. Chen stood up, her professional demeanor barely containing her anger. "This young woman needs immediate hospitalization," she announced, "and we need to have a very serious discussion about medical neglect." The word neglect hit like a thunderbolt. My family stood frozen as Dr. Chen called for an ambulance, their certainty about my attention-seeking finally beginning to crack. Little did they know, this was just the beginning. Dr. Chen's arrival would shatter their comfortable illusions and force them to face the devastating consequences of their disbelief. The emergency room buzzed with activity as doctors and nurses rushed around me. Dr. Chen hadn't left my side during the ambulance ride, efficiently briefing the hospital staff about my condition. My family trailed behind, looking increasingly lost as medical terms flew over their heads. "Her test results are concerning," Dr. Chen announced, studying a fresh set of scans. "The inflammation patterns are exactly what I suspected. We need to start treatment immediately." "What exactly are we looking at?" Dad asked, his usual confidence crumbling under Dr. Chen's stern gaze. "Your daughter has a severe neurological condition that has been left untreated for months," she replied, her voice sharp. "The damage is extensive, and it could have been prevented with early intervention." Lisa, who had spent months calling me a drama queen, suddenly found her designer shoes fascinating. But she seemed fine most days. "Fine?" Dr. Chen's eyebrow arched. "Ms. Thompson, I've reviewed Sarah's medical history. She's documented every symptom, every episode, every time she asked for help. The only thing fine about this situation is how finely tuned your ability to ignore her suffering has become." Megan shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "We thought she was just trying to get attention." "Oh, she has my attention now," Dr. Chen replied coldly, "along with the attention of every specialist in this hospital. Would you like to know what we're seeing?" She pulled up my scans on a screen, pointing out areas of inflammation and damage. My family's faces paled as she explained each finding in excruciating detail. "This," she pointed to one area, "is why she couldn't stand most mornings. And this is why she kept dropping things. And here's why she experienced those fake episodes you so callously dismissed." Dad sank into a chair, his face ashen. "Why didn't any other doctors catch this?" "Because you kept canceling her appointments," Dr. Chen answered, consulting my records. "Every time a doctor suggested specialized testing, you dismissed it as attention-seeking behavior. You actively prevented her from getting the care she needed." The weight of their actions finally seemed to hit them. Lisa started crying, while Megan looked like she might be sick. "What happens now?" Dad asked quietly. "Now," Dr. Chen checked my IV. "Now Sarah begins aggressive treatment to prevent further damage. She'll need extensive physical therapy, medication, and regular monitoring. And you," she fixed them with a stern look, "will all attend mandatory family counseling." "We'll do anything," Lisa whispered, reaching for my hand. I pulled away, not ready for her sudden show of concern. Dr. Chen noticed. "Sarah's psychological recovery may take longer than her physical one. 6 months of being told you're lying about your own body takes a toll." A young nurse entered with more medication, checking my vitals with gentle efficiency. "The pain management team will be here soon," she told me kindly. "You won't have to suffer in silence anymore." Those words hit my family like physical blows. They'd forced me to suffer in silence, had made me question my own sanity, had turned my pain into a family joke. "There's something else we need to discuss," Dr. Chen said, her tone becoming even more serious. "Given the level of medical neglect involved, I'm obligated to file a report. Sarah is an adult, but the deliberate dismissal of her symptoms and prevention of medical care raises serious concerns. Dad's head snapped up. A report? Yes, Mr. Thompson. Your daughter could have suffered permanent disability due to delayed treatment. There are legal implications to consider. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors. My family had always wielded power over me through their disbelief, but now they sat powerless as medical professionals documented their neglect. I didn't know, Dad whispered, more to himself than anyone else. I really didn't know. That's the problem, Dr. Chen replied. You didn't want to know. You chose to believe she was lying rather than consider something might actually be wrong. Lisa dabbed at her eyes with an expensive tissue. We can fix this, right? We can make it up to her. Dr. Chen looked at me, letting me answer. You can't fix the last 6 months, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. You can't undo the damage or erase how you treated me, but you can learn from it. We will, Megan promised, speaking up for the first time in hours. We'll do better. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. That's a start, but the road ahead won't be easy. Sarah needs support, not suspicion. Can you provide that? They nodded eagerly, desperately, but I noticed Dr. Chen didn't look convinced. She'd probably seen many families like mine, forced to face their mistakes only when confronted with undeniable evidence. As my family filed out later that evening, following Dr. Chen's orders to let me rest, I caught a glimpse of their faces. The arrogance was gone, replaced by shame and uncertainty. They'd wanted proof of my illness. Now they had it, in stark medical terms they couldn't dismiss. 3 months into my treatment, the dynamic in our house had shifted dramatically. The same family that once mocked my symptoms now tiptoed around me, their guilt manifesting in different ways. Dr. Chen's report had triggered an investigation, resulting in mandatory counseling sessions with Dr. Peterson, a specialist in medical trauma. Every Tuesday, we sat in her office, unpacking months of dismissal and denial. Sarah endured something deeply traumatic, Dr. Peterson explained during one session. Being disbelieved about your own pain by those meant to protect you creates lasting psychological damage. Lisa, who'd replaced her dismissive comments with excessive hovering, burst into tears. I keep thinking about all the times she begged for help, and I just ignored her. It's not enough to feel guilty, Dr. Peterson responded firmly. You need to understand why you chose disbelief over support. Megan, who'd stopped making snide remarks about attention-seeking, spoke up. I followed Mom's lead. I never even considered Sarah might actually be sick. And that's part of the problem, Dr. Peterson noted. You all created an echo chamber of dismissal, reinforcing each other's assumptions without questioning them. Dad, who'd grown quieter since Dr. Chen's intervention, cleared his throat. I failed as a father. After her mother died, I promised to protect her, but instead, you protected your new family's narrative about me. I finished for him. It was easier to believe I was lying than face the truth. The truth had become impossible to ignore. Under Dr. Chen's care, my condition slowly improved, but the damage from months of neglect left its mark. Physical therapy 3 times a week, regular neurological checkups, and a cocktail of medications became my new normal. One evening, I found Megan in my room, staring at my medication organizer. 8 pills a day, she whispered, and we called you dramatic for asking for help. 12 on bad days, I corrected her, watching her face fall further. How do you not hate us? She asked suddenly. I would hate us. I considered her question carefully. Sometimes I do, I admitted. But hatred takes energy, and I need mine for healing. The investigation triggered by Dr. Chen's report led to changes beyond our family. Dad's insurance company launched an inquiry into denied claims. Lisa, who served on the board of a local healthcare foundation, was asked to step down. Their carefully constructed social image crumbled as the truth about their medical neglect spread. Good, Dr. Chen said during a checkup, after I told her about these developments. Sometimes consequences are the best teachers. She'd become my fiercest advocate, ensuring my family couldn't interfere with my treatment plan. When Lisa suggested alternative therapies instead of all these harsh medications, Dr. Chen shut her down so firmly that Lisa never brought it up again. 6 months after my hospitalization, I made a decision that shocked everyone except Dr. Chen and Dr. Peterson. I'm moving out, I announced during dinner. I found an apartment near the medical center. The table fell silent. Lissa's fork clattered against her plate. But we're just learning how to help you, she protested. That's exactly why I need to go, I explained. I need to heal without the constant reminder of what happened here. She's right, Dr. Peterson supported during our next session. Sarah needs to rebuild her trust in herself, away from the environment that damaged it. Dad helped me pack, handling each box like it contained his broken promises. I'll cover your rent, he offered. It's the least I can do. No, I said gently. I need to do this on my own. My graphic design clients had started returning as my health improved, providing enough income for independence. More importantly, I needed to prove to myself that I could trust my own judgment again. The day I moved out, Megan helped carry my last box to the car. I read about your condition, she said quietly. About how early treatment could have prevented so much damage. I'm sorry we didn't listen. I looked at my stepsister, seeing real understanding in her eyes for the first time. Use that knowledge, I told her. Next time someone tells you they're in pain, believe them. Dr. Chen came to check my new apartment, ensuring it met my medical needs. You've come a long way, she observed, watching me move around the space with growing confidence. Thanks to you, I replied. You gave me back my voice. No, she corrected. You always had a voice. I just helped others hear it. As I settled into my new life, my family struggled to accept our changed relationship. They wanted immediate forgiveness, a quick return to normal. But as Dr. Peterson reminded them, trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. Remember, she said during our final family session, Sarah's independence isn't a punishment. It's her taking control of her health and her life. Looking around my new apartment, at the medication organizer by my bed and the physical therapy schedule on my wall, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. The specialist's visit hadn't just validated my symptoms, it had freed me from the prison of disbelief. My story wasn't over, but at least now I could write it on my own terms. The crack was audible, even over my heavy breathing and the pounding rain. I crumpled onto the wet track, my ankle exploding in agony. Through the downpour, I could see my father's figure approaching, his expression darkening with each step. Get up, Sophia, he barked, umbrella clutched in one hand, stopwatch in the other. Your times are already pathetic today. Stop being dramatic. I was 16, training for my 4th straight hour in the rain. The state championships were 2 weeks away, and according to my father, former Olympic hopeful turned ruthless coach, I was nowhere near good enough. Dad, I gasped, trying to hold back tears. Something's wrong with my ankle. I heard it. The only thing wrong is your attitude. He loomed over me, his voice rising. Your sister Maya never made excuses. She pushed through everything to make it to the Olympics. But you? You're soft. Lazy. Ah yes, Maya. My perfect older sister who'd made it to the Olympics 4 years ago. The golden child whose medals lined our hallway, whose achievements were my father's favorite weapon against me. I'm not Maya, I whispered, attempting to stand. The moment I put weight on my ankle, white-hot pain shot up my leg, and I collapsed again. Clearly, his disgust was palpable. Maya trained through bronchitis, through sprains, through everything. She understood what it takes to be a champion. Now get up. 10 more laps. I can't. The stopwatch clattered next to my head. Can't? There's no can't in this family. Get up. I knew that tone. It meant no dinner if I didn't comply. No phone privileges. No contact with the few friends I'd managed to make between his brutal training sessions. Gritting my teeth, I forced myself to stand, tears mixing with the rain on my face. Each step was agony. My ankle felt like it was being stabbed with hot pokers, but I kept going. 1 lap. 2. By the 3rd, I was barely jogging, my vision blurring. Faster, Dad shouted from under his umbrella. At this pace, you'll never make qualifying times. Do you want to waste all my sacrifices, all the money I've invested in your training? The rain intensified, making the track slippery. On the 4th lap, my ankle gave out completely. I hit the ground hard, the world spinning around me. That's it. Dad's voice was cold as he approached. If you won't train properly, you can walk home. Maybe that'll teach you about commitment. He turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the rain, 3 miles from home. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands, thanking whatever deity existed that it was still working. There was only one person I could call who might help without alerting my father. Coach Martinez, I need help. 20 minutes later, my assistant track coach's car pulled up to the stadium. She took one look at my swollen ankle and her face hardened. "This isn't right," she said, helping me into her car. "We're going to the emergency room." "No." Panic clawed at my throat. "Dad will kill me. He says hospital visits are for the weak." "Your father," Coach Martinez cut in, "is not a doctor. And this," she gestured to my ankle, now purple and swollen to twice its size. "This is abuse." The word hung heavy in the car. Abuse. I'd never thought of it that way. It was just training, just the price of greatness, just what champions endured. Right? At the hospital, Dr. Mitchell, the orthopedist on call, took one look at my ankle and ordered immediate x-rays. The results made him curse under his breath. "This is a severe break," he said, pointing to the images. "And based on the bone structure, there was already a stress fracture here, and here. How long have you been running on this?" I stared at the floor. "The pain started about 3 weeks ago, but Dad said." 3 weeks, Coach Martinez interrupted, her voice sharp. "Sophia, why didn't you tell me?" Before I could answer, my phone started buzzing. Dad's messages flooded in. "Where are you? If you're not home in 10 minutes, tomorrow's session doubles. Maya never pulled this kind of stunt. Stop embarrassing this family." Dr. Mitchell noticed my hands shaking as I read the messages. He shared a look with Coach Martinez before turning to me with gentle eyes. "Sophia, we need to talk about what's been happening with your training. This kind of injury, it's not normal. And forcing you to continue running on it? That's dangerous, potentially career-ending." "But champions push through pain," I recited automatically. "Dad says." "Your father," Coach Martinez said firmly, "is going to have to answer some serious questions. Because this," she pointed to my x-rays, "this is not coaching. This is not training. And it ends today." As if on cue, my father's voice boomed down the hospital corridor. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" Dr. Mitchell stood, blocking the doorway. "Mr. Patterson, I'm Dr. Mitchell. We need to discuss your daughter's injuries." And then, he paused, his voice steely. "We need to discuss why you forced an athlete to run on a broken ankle." The monitor beeped steadily beside me as I waited for the confrontation I knew was coming. But for the first time in years, I wasn't facing my father's rage alone. Maybe, just maybe, someone would finally see the truth behind our family's golden reputation. Dad's face turned that dangerous shade of red I knew too well. "My training methods are none of your concern. I've produced an Olympian. What have you produced, doctor?" "A broken child," Dr. Mitchell replied calmly, still blocking the doorway. "And multiple stress fractures that suggest long-term abuse." "Abuse?" Dad laughed, but it wasn't his public laugh. The one he used for interviews about Maya's success. This was sharp, dangerous. "I'm creating champions. Ask Maya. She understood the sacrifice required for greatness." Coach Martinez stepped forward. "I've reviewed Sophia's training logs. 16-hour sessions, running on injuries, withholding food as punishment. That's not creating champions, that's destroying athletes." While they argued, I noticed my phone lighting up with messages. Maya was calling. With trembling fingers, I answered. "Soph." Maya's voice was different from the confident tone she used in sports interviews. "Coach Martinez texted me. Is it true? About your ankle. It's not that bad." I whispered automatically, our father's voice still echoing in the hallway. "Stop." Maya's voice cracked. "Stop protecting him." I should have. God, I should have said something years ago. After what he did to me. I sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" There was a long pause. "Why do you think I retired at 22, Soph? It wasn't just the hip injury they reported. I couldn't take it anymore. The pain, the constant pressure, the mind games. But I was too scared to speak up. And then he started with you, and I just ran away." The perfect sister narrative crumbled as Maya began to cry. "I'm so sorry, Sophia. I left you alone with him." Before I could respond, a new voice joined the argument outside. "I'm Detective Roberts with Child Protective Services. We received a report about suspected athletic abuse." Dad's voice rose. "This is ridiculous. I'm raising champions." You're raising injured children, Dr. Mitchell countered. Sophia's ankle shows multiple healing fractures. This isn't about sports anymore. It's about safety. The detective entered my room, her kind eyes contrasting with her professional demeanor. She noticed my phone. Is that Maya Patterson? I nodded. Good. Maya, can you hear me? We'll need your statement too. I'll tell you everything. Maya's voice was firm now. Everything he did to both of us. It's time. Over the next hour, the truth spilled out. Maya revealed the hidden costs of her Olympic journey, the broken bones she'd been forced to compete on, the diets that led to eating disorders, the psychological manipulation. I shared my own experiences, training through fevers, running until I vomited, being locked out of the house when my times weren't good enough. Dad was forced to wait outside while we talked. Through the window, I could see him pacing, his carefully constructed world of athletic excellence unraveling. Mom arrived halfway through, her face pale. I didn't know, she kept saying. I thought it was just strict coaching. I didn't know. But she had known. We all had. We'd just been too afraid to name it. Detective Roberts took detailed notes. This pattern of behavior is serious. Mr. Patterson, you'll need to leave the home during our investigation. Mrs. Patterson will need to establish a safety plan for Sophia. She can stay with me, Coach Martinez offered. I have a spare room, and I can ensure she gets proper medical care. Dad finally exploded. This is insane. Everything I did was to make them champions. Maya made it to the Olympics because of me. I made it despite you. Maya's voice cracked through the phone speaker. And look what it cost me. Look what it's still costing Sophia. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward with my x-rays. Your daughter has multiple fractures that have been repeatedly stressed. If she continued running today, she could have caused permanent damage. As it is, she'll need surgery and extensive rehabilitation. Surgery? The word hit me like a physical blow. But the state championships are not happening, Coach Martinez said firmly. Your health comes first. Always. Detective Roberts turned to my parents. We'll need to discuss custody arrangements and supervised visitation. Mr. Patterson, you'll also need to surrender any coaching credentials pending investigation. Dad's face went from red to white. Coaching was his life, his identity, his way of reliving his own failed Olympic dreams through his daughters. You can't do this, he whispered. This is my legacy. Your legacy, Maya's voice was quiet but clear, was breaking your daughters in the name of victory. But it ends today, Dad. It ends with Sophia. As they led my father away, I felt something shift inside me. The constant weight of expectations, of never being good enough, began to lift. My ankle throbbed, but for the first time in years, I wasn't being told to ignore the pain. Coach Martinez sat beside my bed, holding my hand as Dr. Mitchell prepared for the surgery consultation. You know what real champions do, Sophia? They speak up. They protect others. Today, you and Maya did both. Through my tears, I smiled. Not the practice smile I used when Dad bragged about my times to his coaching friends, but a real one. Because finally, the race I never wanted to run was over. And I had won something better than any medal, my freedom. 6 months later, I sat in physical therapy, watching as my ankle slowly rotated through the exercises. The surgery had been successful, but the road to recovery was long, not just physically, but emotionally. Looking good, Sophia, my physical therapist, Lisa, said encouragingly, your range of motion has improved significantly. Maya sat beside me as she had for every session since moving back home 3 months ago. After testifying against our father, she decided to become an advocate for young athletes, speaking out about abuse in competitive sports. Remember when Dad used to say pain was weakness leaving the body? Maya mused, helping me with my stretches. Turns out it was just pain, and we had every right to acknowledge it. The investigation into our father had opened a floodgate. Other young athletes he coached came forward with similar stories of abuse and manipulation. His coaching license was permanently revoked, and he was facing criminal charges. Mom had filed for divorce, finally standing up to him after 25 years. She was in therapy too, learning to recognize how she'd enabled his behavior through her silence. Sophia? Lisa called my attention back. Want to try the balance board today? I nodded, remembering how just months ago, the thought of any athletic activity would have filled me with dread. Now I was learning to move on my own terms, listening to my body instead of fighting it. My phone buzzed. A message from Coach Martinez. Team misses you. No pressure, but we'd love to have you as student assistant coach when you're ready. Your experience could help other athletes recognize red flags. That was different too. Under Dad's regime, stepping back from competition would have been unforgivable. Now I was discovering there were many ways to stay connected to sports without destroying myself. You should do it, Maya encouraged, reading over my shoulder. You've always been good at connecting with people. Better than me, actually. I was too busy trying to be perfect. We both were, I replied, carefully stepping onto the balance board. But perfect almost broke us. After therapy, Maya drove us to our weekly support group, a program for former competitive athletes recovering from abuse. It had been her idea, and it was helping more than I'd expected. I had a nightmare last night, I shared when it was my turn to speak. Dad was forcing me to run again. But this time, I stood up to him. I said no. I woke up crying, but they were good tears, you know. The group nodded. They understood because many of them had similar dreams of standing up, of saying no, of reclaiming their power. Later that evening, Maya and I sat in her apartment looking through old photos. Not the post-victory shots Dad had plastered everywhere, but the real moments, us making silly faces at meets, celebrating small personal victories, just being sisters instead of competitors. Look at this one. Maya pulled out a picture from my first track meet. You were smiling, really smiling. Before Dad turned it into an obsession. Do you ever miss competing? I asked quietly. She thought for a moment. I miss the pure joy of running, of pushing myself because I wanted to, not because I had to. But that disappeared long before my official retirement. She squeezed my hand. What about you? Do you want to return to track? I looked down at my healing ankle. I don't know yet. But for the first time, it feels like my choice. And that's everything. My phone buzzed again. This time a message from Dad's lawyer. He was offering a plea deal, admitting to abuse in exchange for a lighter sentence. He still couldn't acknowledge the damage directly to us, but it was something. He'll never really understand what he did wrong, Maya said softly. In his mind, he was building champions. But we're building something better, I replied. We're building ourselves back up on our own terms. That night, I added another entry to my new journal, not a training log monitoring times and distances, but a real diary tracking my healing journey. Today I realized that strength isn't about pushing through pain or ignoring your body's limits. Real strength is having the courage to say, this isn't right, and the wisdom to choose your own path. Dad wanted to create champions, but Maya and I are becoming something more valuable. We're becoming whole. As I closed the journal, I caught my reflection in the window. The fearful, constantly anxious girl from 6 months ago was fading, replaced by someone stronger. Not because she could push through pain, but because she knew she didn't have to. My ankle would never be perfect. The doctors said I might always have some limitations. But I was learning that limitations weren't failures. They were just part of being human. And being human, with all its imperfections and choices and real, honest feelings, was better than being anyone's version of a champion. The future stretched out before me, not as a predetermined path to athletic glory, but as an open road of possibilities. And for the first time in my life, I was free to choose which direction to take.